The holidays are here, my very good friends, and that means one of many different things. It's time to sit around, it's time to eat, it's time to drink, it's time to socialise with your family, or alternatively, sit around and avoid your family. Whatever your plans may be over this busy Christmas period, it's always useful to have a big bank of stuff to just binge watch on your favourite platform. That's what we're here to talk about today. I've got a whole bunch of recommendations for you, which is particularly charmed if you're here in the UK. We've got Netflix, it's got a whole bunch of WWE content on there. It's very easy to do it episodically. Yeah, it's not quite the old WWE network, but that's long gone now, and we have to work with the tools that we have. So with that in mind, I'm Andy. Here are 15 WWE sagas to binge watch over the holidays when you don't want to talk to your family. And we're going to kick things off with number 15, the Golden Era of NXT. NXT Black and Gold, of course, fits in quite nicely with Golden Era. But for me, as a wrestling fan, this was one of the most gratifying TV shows of my entire wrestling life. I mean, those 2010s broadcasts, it was a perfectly formed 40 minutes to an hour studio TV show. You had a good mix of high quality matches, squash matches, debuts, introductions, promos, on-ramp promos, angles, stories, all those things. It made very clear booking, logical sense from week to week. You got the joy of seeing people come in as nothing and scratch and claw their way to the top, becoming the finished article by the time they hit that main event spot. You have the rise of people like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Neville, Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks. It is an absolutely gold-studded era, and one of the first things that you should be rushing to rewatch this festive period. And hey, speaking of watching stuff, if you're traveling around the world and you want to watch all your content and you want to stay safe online at the same time, and you also want to save up to 73% off, my friends, you need our deal from Norton VPN right now. It's not just VPNs either. They've got a whole range of security software available. The links are in the description below. They are depending on your location, so just make sure you click the right one going in, but you can save up to 73% off. They are second to none when it comes to the sheer range of security products available. Check them out. Number 14 is the Rise of Naomi, and yes, we're going with something of a more recent one here. But her run to prominence and her rise to prominence over the past couple of years in WWE has been extremely gratifying to watch. You can go through the whole alliance with Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, to the heel turn, to the split, all the way up to the Money in the Bank win and cash in. And then, of course, she had to take that time away after becoming champion to raise a family and have a kid with Jimmy Uso and all that good stuff. So while this saga was cut short by that, obviously some things are a little bit bigger than pro wrestling, and having a baby is certainly one of them. But it's a really gratifying period to revisit, even if it's still quite fresh in the memory. Number 13, the cinematic era. And I'm not saying you need to sit down and go and watch all those old Performance Center Raws, because goodness gracious me, if you're already depressed during the holiday season, that will definitely make it even worse. No, what I'm talking about is revisiting some of the oddities from this period, the rise of the cinematic match. Of course, some of them were a little bit better than others, but you can do a lot worse than starting with the Firefly Funhouse and with the Boneyard from that WrestleMania in the PC. Tremendous fun across the board. And yeah, some of these things do waver, right? They got the Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman swamp fight, which, you know, I mean, if you're invested in the Bray Wyatt cinematic universe, that is going to pop you all over again. You've also got things like Ivar getting eaten by a monster in the bin, which was, yeah, it was a little bit strange, that one, let's be honest. But it's all there. It's a window into a completely different world. This kind of stuff just doesn't happen anymore. It was a consequence, obviously, of COVID-19 and the lockdowns and everything else. But hey, look, there will never be another period of pro wrestling quite like the cinematic era. So even from an oddball standpoint, go back and check it out. Number 12, Mark Henry's Hall of Pain. And actually, for this one, WWE Vault uploaded a big old compilation of the chronology, if you will, a timeline of the Mark Henry Hall of Pain run quite recently. So, hey, it's free on YouTube. Why not spend your time watching it? Or alternatively, jump on Netflix and watch the full episodes. Look, this was an incredible career-making run for Mark Henry, the best of his career, absolutely. And just an exercise in the idea idea of less is more. These were relatively straightforward performances Mark Henry was entering. He's just a really gigantic, scary, powerful dude who was believably going to end your career with one single World's Strongest Slam. It was like he was completely reborn after years and years and years of not quite finding his voice in WWE, to go on to have one of the best monster heel runs in the company's history. It's a shame Mark Henry's wrestling career kind of faded away rather than ending on a bang, but this whole run here is absolutely first class WWE content. Some of my favorite stuff WWE's ever done. You should jump in on it. Number 11, the Rise of the Judgment Day, a stable that continues going strong in WWE today and serves as a very useful vehicle for introducing new characters to the main roster and rehabilitating others. This stable started all the way back in 2022 when Edge turned heel and went purple, which was a bit of a not the best start, admittedly, but as soon as Edge was kind of kicked out of there and it became more of a Finn Balor, Rhea Ripley vehicle, the Judgment Day really took flight. There are all kinds of highlights throughout this run, but the Dominic Mysterio heel turn on Rey at Clash in the Castle is definitely a big one, as the stable really found its voice as street trash during that period, the rumoured name change that never came to light there, of course. They'll remain a fixture on WWE TV for as long as they are over and for as long as they remain useful in getting people over. But I mean, there's all kinds of people who've been in and out of the group, from Rhea Ripley and Finn Balor and JD McDonough to Carlito to Liv Morgan to Raquel Rodriguez. Prolific stable, one of the defining ones of WWE's modern era. And if you go back to the beginning and see those promos with the purple light and Edges in a big chair, yeah, it's amazing to see how far they've come. Number 10, Mankind saves The Undertaker. So it's almost hard to believe these days, but once upon a time there was a period where old Mark Calloway weren't doing so good as it did, man. We're talking 1996. We're talking a decision. The recommendation from Jim Ross, actually, to pair Mick Foley up with The Undertaker in an era where The Undertaker was primarily known for having these matches with big lumbering useless monsters and not really put into positions where he could show off his own abilities and his own crazy bumping ability and things like that, despite being absolutely huge himself. Pairing him with Mankind and Mick Foley was an absolute masterstroke. They have a whole catalogue of matches through 1996, going up the way to King of the Ring 98 and the iconic Hell in a Cell fall from Mankind. But there's all kinds of stuff in there you simply need to see if you call yourself a hardcore WWE fan, including the Boiler Room Brawl and a bunch of others. It's the definition of a rivalry, saving a career and jotting, yeah, we'll go with that, jotting a guy up to the very next level. It's tremendous work and absolutely timeless. Number 9, Becky Lynch's rise as the man, which is a quite remarkable bit of somebody getting over huge with a live crowd in the modern era, culminating in her wrestling in the main event of WrestleMania 35 with Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair. Part of the reason that match was in the main event was because Ronda Rousey had a bit of, outside star power to it. The other part of that is that Becky Lynch became the hottest thing in WWE with her reinvention as the man. It all kicked off with a heel turn on Charlotte Flair, which felt a bit misguided at the time because nobody really wanted to boo Becky opposite Charlotte, but quickly turned around and certainly delivered in the ring. And from there, Becky found her voice. She developed a new swagger, a new confidence, a new layer of ego as the man. There's the iconic moment where Nia Jax accidentally bloodied her up ahead of Survivor Series, which meant that Becky had to be pulled from the event, but ultimately didn't mean all that much because the image of her standing there in the crowd with blood all over her face was far more powerful than any involvement in that match would have been. You go through the Royal Rumble, you arrive at WrestleMania. It is a perfect, all-encompassing package. It's one of the greatest runs, one of the greatest star-turning runs of this era, and if you've never seen it, if you're too young, go back, revisit, and appreciate. Number 8, Daniel Bryan forces WWE's hand. I am, of course, talking about the man's rise between 2012 and 2014, culminating at WrestleMania 30, when he finally secured his miracle on Bourbon Street and became the man in WWE, felling Batista and Randy Orton in an iconic triple threat main event. Actually, my favorite match on that show is actually Bryan versus Triple H from earlier on. It's absolutely flawless. Tremendous bit of work. But either way, it's something you can't really relate to a lot in modern wrestling because there isn't as much of this fan rebellion, you're not pushing my favorite, so I'm going to cheer for my favorite and I'm going to boo you. There's not a whole lot of that going on today, and that's good for some people, the bookers. But in some cases, it just kind of accepts that everyone's happy to clap along like a seal and not really speak out, and that's a bit boring, isn't it? The fact is that Vince McMahon and WWE never really wanted to push Daniel Bryan to this level, and they were kind of made to do so by the groundswell of support. There's an idea out there that this whole thing was contrived and that this was the way it was meant to play out and all that, yada yada yada. I respectfully disagree, but I encourage you to watch the whole thing and decide for yourself. Number 7, DX from start to finish. You want to talk about stables that define a certain era of WWE? Well, DX and the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era, those three things can barely exist if DX isn't in the middle of it. Now, this is, of course, the puerile, the crude, the rebellious green and black stadium, helmed by Triple H, helmed by Shawn Michaels until he stepped away in 1998, encompassing Mike Tyson's arrival into WWE. The New Age Outlaws, X-Pac, all this stuff. China, of course. Rick Rude for a bit. Crazy stuff across the board. The invasion of WCW Nitro on a tank. Yeah, they keep saying it was a Jeep. Why do they keep saying it was a tank? That's peculiar. Either way, DX is a stable that can't really exist anymore. It was a product of its time. It was rough, and it was a bit puerile, it was a bit crude, but that was the era, and that's how it fit, and that's why it got over so bloomin' well. In fact, you see from the various attempts at reviving it over the years when Triple H and Shawn Michaels are just a couple of old geezers, it doesn't really hit the same way. The world has moved on from this kind of stuff, absolutely, but as a pure time capsule and to kind of get like a taste of the era and what it represented, you can't do better than this. Number 6 is John Cena's WWE retirement tour. This is the most recent thing on the list because technically, as I record this, it is still ongoing. However, it is one of the most interesting single years for a wrestler in history, not just because of its successes, and I'm talking like the second Cody Rhodes match, the AJ Styles match, the Dominic Mysterio stuff, various other bits and pieces, but also for its failings. I mean, the heel turn is absolutely an incredible angle, one of the best WWE has ever done, and the ensuing failure of that is just going to be so fascinating to view through a lens now that we're not in the immediacy of that heel turn. There's all kinds of quality stuff peppered throughout afterwards. There are some other misses along the way, but in terms of like a roller coaster to just experience, going from the good to the bad to the face to the heel to the AJ Styles to the Brock Lesnar or whatever, there is so much to freaking chew on here. And it's a shame that John had so many limited appearances, honestly. I can see future generations sitting there and going, hey, I'm going to check out John Cena's final run in WWE. Bet all of that is great. And then you get onto some of the bad stuff and you're like, hey, this kind of sucks, but it's also kind of funny because we're removed from it now. So hey, there you go. Maybe that's how people will view the heel, the turn and everything else. His retirement match is coming right up if it hasn't already happened by the time you're watching it. So happy retirement, Big John, but yeah, wild retirement year. Number 5 is the Hart Foundation as heels. We're going back to the 90s here. We're talking Bret Hart's slow burning heel turn as 1996 rolled into 1997. We're talking the reformation of the Hart Foundation with Owen, the Anvil, Brian Pillman, everyone else. And we're talking the build to In Your House Canadian Stampede, which is one of the most, WWE would use the phrase bizarro world matches in WWE history because it is, of course, the Hart Foundation heels marching into Calgary where they are received like heroes opposite the likes of Steve Austin and the Road Warriors, who would naturally be the faces in this scenario. The crowd reaction totally flipping, the wrestlers making the most of these reactions, leaning into it and creating one of the most interesting party atmospheres in wrestling history. There's lots of classic stuff along the way, including a very iconic Bret Hart promo from Raw in March of 1997. But we're talking about one of the most important WWE stables of all time right here, and it's right there on Netflix. Number 4 is the Mega Powers Explode, and if you haven't seen the Mega Powers Explode before, it's probably just because you're too young. It's one of the most iconic stories, moments, whatever else, feuds, rivalries in wrestling history. Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, the bitter jealousy, the paranoia over Miss Elizabeth, the clash, the WrestleMania 5 match, and then of course the big tear-jerking reunion between Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth at the end of all of this. Look, two era-defining stars with an era-defining rivalry. What can possibly be said about the Mega Powers exploding? It's one of the most important, biggest things WWE has ever done. If you're not seen it, if you're too young, rectify that. Number 3 is Austin versus McMahon. Look, we had to put the most obvious thing on here, right? I mean, this is the feud that carried WWE through the most profitable period in the company's history. It saw them turn around the tides in the Monday Night Wars. It saw them finally lap WCW over and over and over again. It was the pitch perfect tone for that generation, for that era of wrestling fans who were mad at their boss at work. They could turn on the TV on Monday night and they could see the ultimate man of the people, the ultimate badass, Steve Austin putting a whip ass on his boss, Vince McMahon, over and over and over again. This technically started with a Stone Cold Stunner in 1997, but it really ramped up in 98 and 99. It is the most classic of classic WWE feuds, especially when it comes to this era. So much so that it still impacts a lot of things going on in wrestling today with regards to heel authority figures and badasses and anti-authoritarian types standing up to them. Look, it's Austin McMahon. What more do you want me to say? Number 2 is CM Punk's WWE return. In fact, you might as well go back and watch some of the stuff before he bounced, right? Before he got let go on his wedding day from 2013, from 2014, to contextualize this whole stuff, because what once seemed unthinkable became, well, thinkable once again at Survivor Series 2023 when he sensationally walked back into WWE shortly after leaving AEW. Of course, you might have to do a bit of fast forwarding after the Royal Rumble because he got injured in that, but make sure you don't skip WrestleMania 40 because Punk's screwing, of course, with Drew McIntyre for the Damian Priest cash-in is kind of pivotal to what ended up being one of the best WWE rivalries of 2024, if not the outright best in Drew versus Punk. It was something that, as wrestling fans, seemed impossible for so long. The idea of it finally coming to light again and revisiting that is very appealing indeed. So what would you rather do? I don't know, put on some socks that you got from an auntie you don't really like, or watch this again? I know my answer. And at number 1, the Bloodline Saga, the defining story of WWE's current period. Of course, it's still technically ongoing today with the MFTs, but it's like a different version of it. In fact, you can probably just consider the January 6th Raw premiere match between Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns as the formal end of the Bloodline Saga once and for all. Roman Reigns is the tribal chief. Solo Sikoa is, I don't know, the tribal queef or something? I don't know, who knows. But really, you need to go back to SummerSlam 2020. You need that Roman Reigns return with the Wreck Everybody and Leave t-shirt on. Finally turning heel after so long of it being like the number one thing on many a wrestling fan's wish list. The context of him failing as the overpush babyface, finding this voice as the tribal chief in the OTC and everything else that followed, putting the bloodline together, his various struggles with the Usos before bringing him under his wing. Solo Sikoa debuting at Clash in the Castle. We're talking Sami Zayn, who is really the main reason this thing caught fire and became so cinematic and bold and big in the first place. This is, to many WWEers, to this generation of fans, it's their equivalent of Austin McMahon. Tonally, it's completely different. It's not man versus boss. It's like a fragile ego of this gaslighty, stable leader trying to keep everything in line, and the various dramatic offshoots of that, including the Sami Zayn face turn, on Roman, which is one of the peak moments of this era of WWE. What better time to revisit the Bloodline than right now during the holiday season when suddenly you've got a lot of time on your hands. Thank you for joining me today. I've been Andy. Check out Norton VPN in the comments below. Have a great holiday season, however you celebrate it, whoever you celebrate it with. And I'll see you probably tomorrow, let's be honest. We're all over the place. Bye.